I'm Josh Ryan, licensed professional counselor, and this is Pause and Respond, the framework for emotional control, disciplined thinking, and better decisions under pressure. Have you ever been in the middle of a difficult conversation and suddenly you had nothing? Not because you didn't care, not because you didn't have an opinion. 5 minutes earlier, you knew exactly what you wanted to say. You had thoughts, you had feelings, you had a point, but something changed. Their voice got louder, their tone became sharper. They asked you a question and suddenly your mind went blank. So you said something like, I don't know, or whatever, or I'm fine. Or maybe you didn't say anything at all. Then something frustrating happens. The conversation ends. You walk away, you get in the car, you step into the shower, maybe you lie down for the night. And suddenly, all of the words come back. Every one of them. You know exactly what you should have said. You know what you were feeling. You understand what bothered you about that situation. You can now explain your position perfectly, and you think, where was all of this 20 minutes ago? You ever wondered that? I don't think you suddenly become smarter after the conversation. And I don't think you suddenly become more honest. Something else happened. When the pressure went down, your words came back. And that's important. Because maybe the problem isn't that you had nothing to say. Maybe you temporarily just lost access to what you wanted to say. And those are two different things. I've watched this happen countless times in counseling. A couple is sitting across from each other. One person is explaining everything they're feeling. They're frustrated, emotional, they're asking questions. And the other person becomes quieter and quieter and quieter. Eventually the other partner says, say something. And the response is, I don't know what you want me to say. The frustration grows. It sounds something like anything, or tell me what you're thinking, tell me what you're feeling. But something strange happens. The more pressure that's applied in that moment, the less available the words seem to become. Now both people begin misunderstanding what's happening. One person thinks they don't care. The other is thinking, I literally don't know what to say right now. One person experiences silence as rejection, while the other experiences the demand for words as more pressure. So one moves closer and the other moves farther away. One begins to ask more questions. The other gives shorter answers. One becomes louder. The other becomes quieter. And eventually, both people leave the conversation believing something about the other that may not actually be true. I think we need to make an important distinction here. Silence isn't always avoidance. Sometimes silence demonstrates overload. Now let's be careful. Some people absolutely use silence to punish, to control, to avoid accountability, to make another person chase them. Those things are real. And we shouldn't use the language of shutdown to excuse behavior that is intentionally harmful. But there's another way experience that you can look almost identical from the outside. Withdrawal begins to say, I don't want to engage. Shutdown says, I can't access what I need to engage well right now. Same silence, different experience. And that's why I think one of the better questions we can learn is to ask, am I refusing this conversation? Or am I losing access to myself inside of it? Because those require different responses. If I'm avoiding, I may need courage. If I'm overwhelmed, I may need space. And knowing the difference matters. One of the loneliest parts of shutting down is being accused of not caring. You may be overwhelmed because you care so much. Now think about that. Someone says you don't care, you never communicate, you're ignoring me, why can't we just talk? And from the outside, you may appear detached, quiet, flat, maybe even indifferent. But inside, everything may be happening at once. You're trying to listen, trying to understand, trying to manage what you're feeling, trying to figure out what they're feeling, trying to not say the wrong thing, trying not to make the situation worse. And eventually, there's so much happening inside that almost nothing comes out. That's a painful experience, because now you're not only overwhelmed, you're being misunderstood while you're overwhelmed. And sometimes that misunderstanding creates even more pressure. We begin to hear things like, say something, or I'm trying. Then tell me what you're thinking. I don't know. The window begins to get smaller. Now, if you've ever experienced that, you may have eventually started believing something about yourself. You may have had beliefs like, I'm bad at communication, or I can't talk about my feelings, or maybe just something is wrong with you. Maybe, but maybe there's another possibility worth considering. Maybe you communicate perfectly well when you have enough access to yourself. Maybe the question isn't simply, can I communicate? Maybe the better question is, under what conditions can I communicate well? And that's different. And I think it's much more useful. Because communication isn't simply about having thoughts. You have to be able to access them. You have to recognize what you're feeling, and you have to listen to the other person. You have to organize language, decide what matters, and you have to choose how you're going to say something. And sometimes all of that becomes harder as emotional pressure rises. Not impossible, but harder. That's why I've had clients tell me I need time to think before I respond. And somewhere along the way, they became ashamed of that. They watched someone else communicate quickly, argue quickly, explain quickly, and they began to assume that speed meant emotional intelligence. It doesn't. Sometimes speed is simply just speed. The goal isn't becoming the fastest person in the conversation. The goal is staying present enough to remain in the truth. So I want to give you a name to something we'll explore more deeply as we continue. There's a range where you can still think, listen, feel, and speak. You may be uncomfortable, you may be frustrated or even angry, but you're still available to yourself, to another person, and to the conversation at hand. Now I'm going to call that the communication window. And when emotional pressure begins pushing you outside the window, something changes. We'll talk about exactly what changes in that moment. But for now, I simply want you to recognize that the window exists. Because this gives us another way to understand something that happens in difficult conversations. Sometimes, more conversation doesn't create more communication. Sometimes more pressure, more questions, more demands for an immediate answer actually move two people further away from the conversation they're trying to have. Now, that doesn't mean we avoid difficult conversations. It does mean that timing matters, pressure matters, and our ability to remain present matters. Maybe you've experienced this somewhere other than your marriage. Your boss confronts you unexpectedly. Maybe a coworker criticizes you in a meeting. A parent asks a question you weren't prepared for. Someone catches you completely off guard. You give a short answer, maybe an answer you don't like. Then an hour later you think, that's what I should have said. Again, where did those words now come from? They were probably there all along. You simply regained access to them after the pressure surrounding you decreased. So I don't want you leaving this part of our conversation thinking I just need to learn how to talk more. That's not the problem. Instead, I want you to think about your last difficult conversation. But don't think about the moment you stopped talking. Go earlier, 30 seconds earlier. What happened? Did your breathing change? Did your chest tighten? Did your face get warm? Did you start searching desperately for the right answer? Did everything begin moving faster? Or maybe everything inside of you suddenly went quiet. Don't try to fix it yet. Don't analyze it. Just notice what occurred. Because I think the question that changes this conversation is not, why do I always shut down? It's a little more specific. A little bit more like, what happens inside of me in the 30 seconds before I disappear? And that's where we're going to go next. We're going to slow those 30 seconds down and understand what changes as emotional pressure rises. Because your shutdown probably didn't begin when you stopped talking. It began earlier. And if we can learn to recognize that moment before the words disappear, we may discover that finding your voice doesn't begin with forcing yourself to speak. It begins with learning how to stay available to yourself. And staying available to yourself is harder than it sounds, because shutdown usually doesn't happen all at once. There's a moment before it, sometimes several, small changes that happen so quickly you may never learn to notice them. Your breath changes, your body tightens, your attention shifts. You stop listening to understand, and you start listening for what might come next. And somewhere inside of those few seconds, the conversation begins becoming something else. Now, maybe you've experienced it. Someone says something that catches you off guard. You feel that first little surge. Your chest tightens, your stomach drops, your face gets warm, and immediately your mind begins working harder. It begins giving you questions like, what do they mean by that? Where is this going? What am I supposed to say to this? What's the right answer? Now, at first, you're still in the conversation, but something is changing. That's what I want us to understand about the communication window. The question isn't whether you're emotional. You can be frustrated, hurt, angry, disappointed, and still communicate well. The better question is, am I still available? Available to listen, available to be yourself, available to the other person, available to choose instead of simply survive. And an emotional pressure rises, that availability begins to change. Maybe the first thing you notice is your attention narrowing. Earlier in the conversation, you could hear the whole message. Now, you hear only one sentence, one accusation, one word. Maybe they talked for 2 minutes, but the only thing your mind remembers is you always, or you never, or this is exactly why. Everything else begins disappearing. Your attention grabs onto whatever feels the most threatening, and suddenly that becomes the entire conversation. Then your thinking begins to narrow too. Nuance becomes more difficult. Earlier, you might have been able to think, I don't agree with everything you're saying, but I can understand a part of it. But now your thoughts sound different. They sound like nothing I say is going to matter. I'm going to make this worse. There's no point. Or simply, I don't know. And I think that last one is worth slowing down. Because sometimes I don't know means exactly that. But sometimes it means there's too much happening inside me right now for me to organize it into language, and that's different. Maybe your mind didn't go blank. Maybe it became crowded with too many thoughts, emotions, or possible responses. Too much awareness of what every response might cost. And eventually your system solves complexity by simplifying. Say less, do less, get through the moment. That's why I think we need another way of understanding shutdown. Sometimes shutdown isn't having nothing inside. It's having too much inside at once. Not emptiness, but congestion. And that's an important distinction. Because if the problem is emptiness, the solution sounds like, come on, say something. But if the problem is congestion, more pressure may make access to language even harder. And that's exactly what often happens. It goes something like this. What are you thinking? I don't know. Well, how can you not know? Well, I'm trying. Then just tell me. I don't know what you want me to say. The person asking questions is trying to create connection. The person receiving is trying to process. But the more urgency enters the room, the more the communication window begins to narrow. One person pushes harder because silence feels frightening. The other becomes quieter because pressure feels overwhelming. And neither one of them realizes they're accidentally creating the exact pattern both of them are trying to escape. And this is where I want to be careful, because recognizing shutdown doesn't mean difficult conversations suddenly become optional. The communication window isn't an excuse to leave every time something becomes uncomfortable. A pause isn't healthy simply because we call it pause. Here's the distinction. A pause without return becomes avoidance. A pause with return becomes regulation. But even that needs one more piece, because returning isn't only about the clock. It's about what you do while you're away. If you leave the conversation for 20 minutes and spend all 20 minutes building your case, rehearsing your argument, collecting the evidence, thinking about everything the other person did wrong, your body may have left the room, but emotionally, you're still fighting, and that's not regulation. That's preparation for round two. The purpose of the pause isn't to figure out how to win. It's to become available again. Available to listen, think, recognize what your feelings are, and to remember that the person across from you isn't simply the problem you're trying to solve. There's someone you're trying to stay connected to. So maybe the question during the pause isn't, what am I going to say when I get back? Maybe it's, am I getting ready to reconnect, or am I getting ready to go win? That's a very different use of 20 minutes. Now, I've worked with couples where learning this changed the entire rhythm of conflict. Instead of someone walking away without explanation, they learned to say, I'm getting overwhelmed. They learned to say, I want to finish this conversation. I need 20 minutes to settle down and think. Or let's come back to this at 8. Notice what that communicates. The person who needs space gets space. But the person who fears disconnection gets something too. And that's return. And that sounds like both I need space and I'm still here. Both of those can be true simultaneously. I think that's one of the most important things we can learn about emotionally healthy pauses. They don't just create distance from pressure. They protect connection while pressure decreases. Because sometimes the other person isn't afraid that you need 20 minutes. They're afraid the 20 minutes means we're done. You're leaving. This conversation will never happen. So a healthy pause doesn't only say I need space. It also says you still matter enough for me to come back and have this conversation. Now let's go back to those 30 seconds. Because if we want to recognize shutdown earlier, we need to know what we're looking for. And your body and your warning signs usually show up in one of these three places: your body, your thoughts, or your behavior. Your body may tell you first: tight chest, breathing, jaw clenches, face becomes warm, stomach may drop, or maybe you begin feeling strangely numb. Your body is giving you information before you have found the language to express it. Now, sometimes your thoughts will tell you first. Things like, whatever, there's no point, nothing I say will matter, just make this stop. Those thoughts matter because they may be telling you you're getting close to the edge of the communication window. And sometimes your behavior tells you. Your answers get shorter. You stop making eye contact. You cross your arms. You begin looking away or checking your phone. You physically move further apart. Maybe you stop responding altogether. Body, thoughts, behavior. Your pattern may show up different than someone else's. The important question is, which one usually tells you first? Because your earliest signal gives you your greatest number of choices. And that's what makes this hopeful. If shutdown were completely random, there wouldn't be much we could do. But most patterns have signals, and signals create opportunities. Not opportunities to eliminate emotion, but opportunities to respond sooner before the words disappear, before silence gets misunderstood, and before the other person begins chasing. Before you become so overwhelmed that leaving feels like it's your only option. And maybe the response doesn't need to be profound. This is where I think many people make communication harder than it has to be. They believe that if they don't know exactly what it is yet, they can't say anything. That's not true. You don't have to know what you think yet to communicate where you are. Phrases like, I'm starting to get overwhelmed. I'm having trouble finding my words. I need a minute to think. I'm still listening. I want to continue this conversation. I just need for us to slow down. That's communication. You aren't communicating an answer yet, but you're communicating the process. And sometimes that's exactly what keeps the relationship connected while the answers are still forming. I think that may be one of the biggest breakthroughs for people who shut down. You don't have to disappear simply because you don't have words. You can remain present while admitting that the words haven't arrived. And that's a completely different experience. Imagine what that could change. Instead of your partner hearing silence, they hear, I'm overwhelmed, but I'm still here. Instead of your boss getting a rushed answer, they hear, I want to think about that before I respond. Instead of forcing yourself to speak while everything inside of you feels crowded, you communicate the one thing you actually know. And that's, I need a little time to find the words. That's not failed communication. That's emotionally mature communication. And that's where I want to leave us before we move forward. Not with, how do I stop shutting down? That's entirely too big. Instead, with something much more possible. And that's, how do I stay connected while I'm finding my words? Because maybe finding your voice doesn't mean forcing yourself to speak faster. Maybe it means recognizing yourself early enough to say, I'm still here, before silence has to say it for you. And that's where we're going to go next. And maybe that's where the real change begins. Not with learning how to speak faster. Not with forcing yourself to stay in the conversation long after you've lost access to yourself. But learning how to stay connected while you're finding your words, because there's a space between talking and disappearing. And many people have never been taught how to live there. For years, you may have believed you only had two options: stay in the conversation and figure out somehow to say, or leave, keep talking, or shut down. Answer immediately or say nothing. But there's another option that you can communicate, that you're still finding the answer. You can tell someone, I don't have my words yet, but I'm still here. Now imagine the conversation getting tense. You feel your chest tighten. You recognize the thought. Your answers are getting shorter. You know this pattern. Usually, this is where you disappear. But this time, you recognize yourself earlier. Instead of forcing another answer, you say, I'm starting to lose my words. That's it. Nothing profound, nothing perfectly therapeutic, just honest. I'm starting to lose my words. Imagine how different that moment becomes. Your partner no longer has to guess whether you're angry, whether you don't care, or if you're ignoring them, or whether you're about to leave. You've given them something your silence couldn't, and that's information. You're communicating that something is happening inside you right now, that you're trying, that you don't have an answer yet. But most importantly, it's communicating, I'm still here. And that's connection, even before you know what you want to say. I think that's one of the biggest freedoms in this entire conversation. You don't have to understand everything you're feeling before you're allowed to communicate honestly. Sometimes honesty sounds simply like I'm hurt, or I'm angry, or I don't know yet. Sometimes the most honest sentence available to you is enough for that moment. Now, the goal isn't perfect communication. The goal is staying available enough that the relationship doesn't have to interpret your disappearance. And that's why simple connection statements matter. Statements like, I'm overwhelmed, but I'm listening. I don't know what I think yet. I want to answer you as well. I need some time, but I want to come back. None of those statements solve the conflict, but they do something just as important. They keep connection alive while clarity catches up. And maybe that's what emotionally secure connection sometimes sounds like. Not, I have the answer, but I'm still here. I don't have my words yet, but I'm still here. I need some space. I disagree with you. I'm overwhelmed, but I'm still here. Those words communicate something powerful. Difficulty doesn't automatically mean disconnection. If you need a pause, take one. But remember what we've already discovered. A pause without return becomes avoidance. A pause with return becomes regulation. So don't simply say, I need space. Give the relationship something it can trust. I need 20 minutes. I want to come back to this. Can we talk again after dinner? Those are very different kinds of pauses. Then use the pause for what it's actually for, not an opportunity to build your case or to rehearse the perfect argument. But use the pause to become available again. Take a walk, slow down, sit somewhere quiet. Notice what's happening inside you. Give yourself time to ask, what am I actually feeling? What am I trying to communicate? And what actually matters most here? And maybe the most important question is, am I preparing to reconnect, or am I preparing to win? Because the goal isn't returning with better ammunition. It's returning with more access to yourself. And this is where I think we need to add something important. Because finding your words is only half the work. Eventually, you have to bring them back into the room. And that's where courage enters. Maybe after 20 minutes, you finally realize, I'm angry, or that really hurt me, or I disagree with you. Now the problem isn't access. You found the words. The question becomes, will you trust yourself enough to say them? Because a pause that helps you find your voice only matters if you're willing to bring that voice back. Not harshly or dramatically, not even perfectly, but just simply honestly. Maybe your voice shakes. Maybe the sentence doesn't come out exactly as you rehearsed it. Maybe the other person doesn't immediately agree. That's okay. The goal wasn't perfect delivery. The goal was truth without disappearance. Fear protects relationships by hiding. Healthy connection asks something braver. It says, let me know who you actually are. Not the version who says whether we'll end the conflict fastest. Not the version who disappears until everything becomes comfortable again. But you. Your thoughts, needs, your hurts, your disagreement, and ultimately your truth. Because finding your words isn't freedom if you're still too afraid to use them. Now, I've watched couples transform the way they handle conflict. Not because they stopped becoming overwhelmed, but because overwhelmed stopped becoming mysterious. One person learned to say, I'm getting close to shutting down. And the other learned not to hear that sentence as rejection. Those are both major shifts. Because now, instead of fighting each other, they can bring protecting the conversation together. And if you're usually the person on the side of the shutdown, there's something important here for you too. Your job isn't to force the words out, but your job also isn't to accept permanent avoidance. Those are two extremes. If someone tells you I'm overwhelmed or losing their words, you can help protect the conditions where the conversation can continue. You might ask, okay, how much time do you need? When should we come back to this? Is there anything you need from me before we pause? You're not abandoning the issue. You're helping create enough space for both people to return to it well. Maybe the conversation sounds like this. I'm getting overwhelmed. Okay, do you need some time? Yes. Are we coming back? Yes. Give me 20 minutes. That's not dramatic. It's probably never going to appear in a movie, but it's incredibly healthy. That's two people saying this relationship matters more than finishing the conversation right this second. And 20 minutes later, you come back. That's the important part. You come back. Maybe you sit down, you take another breath, and you say, okay, I think I understand what I was trying to say. Maybe the answer is simpler now. The bottom line is the words return because you're no longer trying to solve everything at once. And that's why finding your voice doesn't always mean becoming louder. Sometimes finding your voice just means becoming clearer. And clarity usually doesn't arrive through pressure. It arrives through enough space to hear yourself again. Imagine how much that could change. You are no longer have to fear every difficult conversation because you know there's somewhere to go between reacting and disappearing. You don't have to manufacture answers. You don't have to pretend you're fine. You don't have to leave someone staring at silence. You can communicate. And sometimes those may be the most important words in the entire conversation. So here's the practice I'd like you to carry with you this week. Don't wait for the next major argument. Start noticing your communication window. In ordinary conversations, watch these three things: your body, your thoughts, and your behavior. Which one tells you first that you are beginning to leave? Like we said before, maybe it's in your chest, maybe it's a thought, right? Maybe your answer suddenly becomes shorter. That's your signal. And remember, your earliest signal gives you your greatest number of choices. So when you notice it, don't wait until you're completely gone. Name where you are. Then, if you take the pause, return. And when you return, bring something honest back with you. That's the practice. Recognize, name, pause, return, speak, and stay. Because that's the skill we're actually building. Not becoming someone who never feels overwhelmed, becoming someone who doesn't have to abandon themselves when overwhelm arrives. Now, if today's episode resonated with you, I want you to think about the last conversation where your words disappeared. Go back 30 seconds. What did your body, thoughts, and behavior do? Think about your earliest signal and then ask yourself, what could I have said in that moment to communicate that I was still there? Maybe that's where your next conversation begins to change. And if you're ready to practice these ideas beyond the podcast, visit pauseandrespond.com. You'll find practical resources designed to help you recognize emotional patterns earlier, slow down reactions, and build healthier communication in the relationships that matter most. Because insight helps you understand why your words disappear, but practice helps you recognize the moment before they do. And if you know someone who becomes quiet during difficult conversations, maybe don't send them this episode with, see, this is what you do. Send it with, I think this helped me understand what might be happening for you. Because sometimes the person who shuts down doesn't need more pressure to communicate. They need someone who understands why communication became difficult. And one day, you're going to be in a conversation that would have shut you down before. You're going to feel that chest tighten. You're going to notice those thoughts narrowing, and those words are going to begin to disappear. And this time, instead of leaving yourself, you'll recognize yourself. You'll say, I'm getting overwhelmed. Maybe you'll ask for space. Maybe you'll stay. Maybe you'll need 20 minutes. But you'll communicate, I'm still here. And then you'll come back, maybe with a shaky voice, maybe with imperfect words. Maybe the conversation remains difficult, but you'll say what is true. And when the conversation is over, you may realize something. You didn't explode. You didn't pretend. You didn't disappear. You simply just stayed. And that's emotional freedom, not becoming fearless in difficult conversations, not always having the right words, but learning that when your words disappear, you don't have to disappear with them. Learn and understand your signals. Protect that window. Take the pause when you need it, but make sure you come back, tell the truth, and stay. I'm Josh Ryan. This is Pause and Respond. Less reaction, more choice.